now is that Michael Shermer podcast. He's got Donald Hoffman on there, and you can tell that Hoffman really makes him think in a couple of places that he didn't expect.
So it looks like we're being recorded.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I got booted. I'm sorry. Whatever that was about showing it on YouTube, Facebook didn't work. So we're going to just do a recording and we'll upload it to places later. Okay, so I'm sorry I missed the first part. So James, where would you like to go in this round table? We need to get everybody's perspective on the issues. See, it's confusing to me. Like, I don't understand a lot of the Trumpism, especially with my brother. You're my brother, and I don't understand where we diverged in our belief systems here. Because we started out, well, we had some common things. We're children of racist parents, so, and we're white, right? And so we have some commonalities. We were both raised Christian, Presbyterian, pretty middle of the road.
I'm a deist.
Pardon?
I'm a deist.
A deist, okay. What do you mean by a deist?
Yes.
What do you mean?
I believe in a creator of all things, a supreme being, and basically that's it.
Okay. And let's go around here.
I believe
Go ahead.
I believe that I can communicate with him directly, and he communicates with me directly. I don't need any priest or shaman or anybody to intervene for me, because he's the supreme being. So if he wants to do something, he can do it. But if he doesn't want to do it, if it's not in his will, he doesn't do it.
And is it he? Is God masculine?
Well, that's the language, is either he or she or it. So I prefer to use the word he.
Okay.
But he could be an it.
Okay.
But yeah, I also believe that he created the universe, but he does not. He kind of sits outside the universe and watches what's going on. He created the universe so that we would have free will, so that we can choose between good or evil. And if we choose good, we're rewarded. If we choose evil, then we suffer the consequences.
Okay, so let's go to James. What's your basic, the belief you were raised in, and what do you believe now?
I was raised as a Presbyterian till I was going through the confirmation process, and then they lost me with a little bit of dogma coming out of the Bible. I didn't want to make the leap to believe certain things, and so it felt like an irreconcilable difference. But I really appreciate the teachings of the Bible, and specifically Jesus, very much. But I became a Buddhist about 22 years ago, and so I've been a Buddhist in a Tibetan tradition for a long time. And so basically, at this point, I want people to be happy, which means to give up their attachments, give up their plans, their identities, their agendas, and just be with the miracle that is everything when you stop, thinking that it's an enemy of you.
Okay, I think when we're finished, we'll say passing the mic or something like that. I'm passing the talking stick, so that's why I want to interrupt.
Oh yeah, pass the talking stick. Yeah, just to be clear. Yeah, thank you. I'll do that. I'm done. I'm complete.
Well, I was raised in Titusville, Florida on the Space Coast by Republican conservative Baptists, and brought up to believe that the Bible is the inerrant word of Almighty God. And when I was 13, I began having biblical questions that nobody could answer, like how did Noah get two of a kind of 27 million species on a 400-foot wooden boat? And why is the God of the Old Testament so angry and vengeful? And I embarked on my own biblical research for a couple of decades. And in 2000, I wrote my first book called Outgrowing the Bible, The Journey from Fundamentalism to Free Thinking. It's still on Amazon. And I considered myself an agnostic at that point. And then in 2009, I was explaining to James I had a near-death experience that revealed the multi-dimensional nature of reality to me in a glimpse of the afterworld. And I became open for the first time in my life to everything paranormal that I had previously rejected, from ghosts to cryptids, UFOs. And I wound up writing a second book called Overlords of the Singularity, the Manipulation of Humankind by Hidden UFO Intelligences and the Quest for Transcendence, in 2016. And since 2016, 4 years ago, I've continued my studies, and my current paradigm is leaning towards what some of the researchers like Dr. Bernardo Castro and cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman are into, conscious realism or idealism, where the underlying nature of reality, which is called the ontological primitive, is consciousness itself. The physicalists, as I was talking to James earlier, they've got what they call the hard problem of consciousness, because you can rearrange inanimate matter any way you want, and you're never going to get qualia out of it, the taste of chocolate or the taste of vanilla. There are correlations between neuronal activity and certain sensations that we have, but there's no causality assumed there. So I like what John Keel, my favorite UFO author, said: belief is the enemy. And what he meant by that is, if you invest yourself in a particular dogma or a particular way of thinking, at that point, the truth can smack you in the face and you won't recognize it because you're already invested in this other thought process. So I try to keep a very open mind. I listen to just about everybody, and if it resonates with me, I accept it. If not, I don't reject it. I just kind of put it in a file of what if. So at this point in time, my paradigm is in flux, and I'm open to a lot of different types of things and ideas regarding the nature of time. One author, Carlo Rovelli, he's a loop quantum gravity physicist, Italian fellow, and he wrote 2 books, Reality is Not What It Seems and The Order of Time, that really stretched my imagination, that we don't, our experience of time here on Earth is strictly a local phenomenon, a local experience, that time flows very differently throughout the universe, depending on how closely associated you are with baryonic matter and the mass involved. So the present moment is not shared by the rest of the universe, and that's kind of a hard thing to embrace. Or the fact that time flows slower on the surface of the Earth than it does in the mountains. Time would flow slower the closer you get to the core of the Earth than it does on the surface. So time is very flexible. So testimonies from people that tell of missing time episodes or time anomaly experiences, I'm open to and I listen to. I can't say I accept it completely, but it's in the file as maybe. So that's where I'm at. I'm in a paradigm in flux sort of situation.
Okay, thank you. So I was raised Presbyterian, and like you, James, when it came through the time to commit and join the church, I couldn't do it. There was a certain school of hypocrisy. I was also a lifetime experiencer of extraterrestrial and interdimensional and ghost phenomena, and I've been traveling out of body since I was a child. And so I knew that the nature of reality wasn't really what they were saying it was. Plus, there were things that didn't make sense. I think the Noah's Ark was kind of the one that blew it for most people. It's like, how are you going to get the 2 of the kind? And they weren't all in one place. So how were they getting around the whole planet, getting all the creatures from all the different, the polar bears when they were in one location? So it didn't jive. And around that time, in 1968, I think it was 66, Star Trek came out, and 67, 68, Eric Von Daniken, and I said, that is it. There's ancient aliens, ancient astronauts, they called it back then. And so I started reading in 70, what year was it? 70 something. Zechariah Sitchin came out with the Gods of Eden and 12th Planet all came out, and so I started studying all these things. Of course, my family with Bill, we would all, when we were kids, sit around the table and debate the Bible. And of course, I discovered Edgar Casey, and Edgar Casey has a wonderful description in one of his books. I've lost all those books over the years, but about the creation of God contemplating self. And so he became self and he appeared other, and started to subparse and subdivide and so on and so forth down the ages, millenniums, and we eventually started incarnating in flesh form and populating the universe. So I kind of go in line with that with Edgar Casey and with Zechariah Sitchin and explaining the history. But I believe in universal consciousness, all that there is. I don't see it as a man on a, sitting on a throne and making decisions. I think it's, I think we are God, and we've agreed to go unconscious, and we've subparsed into our different lives. But somebody, I guess, said about a month ago, there's only one life. And I think it was Buddhist. There's only one life, and we all have these little segments that we experience as our lives, but there's just one big giant life, and we identify where we want to be in existence, and we kind of focus our intention, and that becomes our now. When we go to sleep or meditating or something, we might be in a different life. So next thing I want to go into is, how did each of us discover what we believe in politically? Like, how is it that you decide that you're Republican or Democrat or liberal? What are the different things within that you identify with, that you believe, that you take on as your own, that you want to see happen for yourself in the world? So we'll start with James.
Okay. So just how did I form my political identity, kind of,
Yes.
And how did I figure out where I fit into the system? Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I guess I probably had, you could say my first political experience might have been hearing about the Vietnam War and feeling like, wow, there's something really, really wrong with what's going on around here. And for some reason, I associated that kind of pushy, ignorant, what I'd say really counterproductive militarism and abuse of power, coercion, all that kind of energy with the Republican Party. And I associated peace with the Democratic Party. So I guess that probably was the origin of it. But it did, I've experienced Republicans since Newt Gingrich. I mean, Newt Gingrich believed that politics was a war for power and people should start acting like it. And I would rather have a political reality that is based on what serves the people. So I have felt a pretty fundamental difference between myself and the Republican Party for a long, long time. Lying us into the Iraq War is like a fact in my universe, and that kind of unnecessary human carnage, really, I could characterize that pretty negatively. That whole thing was wanton abuse of, the needs of humans and the inherent dignity of human beings. And so, I don't know, I just kind of, the Democratic Party is guilty of many, many things, as well as, not to mention going along with that and not really cleaning up after it. So I don't feel a lot of allyship actually with anyone in the media or in the national political landscape at all. So if I did feel a sense of allyship, it would probably be with Bernie Sanders, but the chances of him actually enacting anything that he wants to do are extremely unlikely. So I'm not sure why people are so confused about just basic self-care and basic getting along and cooperating and collaborating with each other, but we seem to be, brought into a world where people's needs don't get taken care of, and then we blame each other. Usually the least powerful among us, the people least likely to make decisions that actually impact our well-being, and just blame them for our problems. And it seems to be going that way And the system as it is seems to be chugging along on its own, regardless of how it really meets human needs. So I'm kind of an idealist, I could say, from a certain point of view. But ever since noticing active measures is happening, then my whole reality has actually changed quite a bit. And I've noticed that there's not that many trustworthy actors in the media or government, I would say. And it has me feeling like really bringing the rest of us together, the people who are on the receiving end of the divisiveness and polarization that we're being led down. So that's pretty much my political reality now, is wanting to create a shared reality between people who are really on the receiving end of something that's really not going to work out very well for people. So I feel complete with that. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Russell, your turn.
Well, a lot of it has to do with core temperament, I believe. There seems to be two different basic temperaments in the American population and possibly the world. The first temperament is focused on individualism, and they tend to be focused on how policies affect them personally or monetarily, and it's more tribalist, I would say.
How did you formulate your political beliefs, Russell? How did you become, what is your political affiliation, and how did you get to that point?
Well, I would consider myself an independent. There's things about the Republican Party and the Democrat Party that I like and don't like, and about people in general that ascribe to being Republicans and being Democrats that I like and don't like. My own paradigm is any thought or action that's in the eventual best interest of all parties concerned. I tend to embrace policies that would be good for the entire planet, for all flora and fauna on planet Earth. And I like to see beyond borders, beyond ethnicity, just beyond everything I see a lot of people focused on. We're all the same species on the planet. The whole concept of race is ludicrous because the number of genes that program for skin color are so minuscule that it's not even worth mentioning. All of us on the planet can interbreed with one another. So the concept of race just needs to be tossed out. And I care about the animals. I care about the sustaining of the planetary environment. So I tend not to like corporatism and the deregulation movement that just basically wants to unravel all the regulations so that they can engage in unlimited pollution for their own personal fortunes. And I have a lot of friends. Some are Republicans, some are Democrats, some are conservatives, some are liberals. I try to talk to everybody, but I'm noticing under the reign of Trump a greater and greater divide. People are really dug in, and it's almost like their fundamental concept of good and evil is bifurcating. And we've got what James mentioned once, the prosperity theology that's infiltrated into Christianity, where from my perspective, it's basically money worship. That you've got all these TV evangelists that want you to send them their money so the windows of heaven will open up on your finances and bless your health and all this kind of stuff. And to me, they're complete frauds. And even though biblically, I don't think that the deity described in the Old Testament is an accurate depiction of any postulated creator of the universe, I do resonate with much of what Jesus said in the New Testament. Even though much of it's probably written pseudepigraphically, I do resonate with a lot of that, like whatever you do to the least of these, you do under me. Take care of orphans and widows instead of creating them at the border. And, blessed are the poor, all the things that Jesus allegedly said. I try to adopt and love my neighbor as myself and all those good things. So my understanding is that the first century Christians, for about 3 centuries, just operated under some handwritten codexes of Jesus' simple teachings. And then in 325 AD, Constantine, who was a warring Roman emperor, brought back the Talmud, or the books of the Old Testament. And in so doing, sort of created a schizophrenic religion where if you want to justify war, you quote from the Old Testament. If you want to justify pacifism, you quote from Jesus. And they're really counter to one another. And in a lot of my biblical research, I did discover the origins of the Noah story back to the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's an Assyrian tale about 1700 years prior to the retelling of the story in the Old Testament. And the Sumerian version of Utnapishtim, the son of Ubar-Tutu, probably was derived from a real event that researcher Graham Hancock is talking a lot about right now, called the Younger Dryas Impact Event of 12,920 years ago. And if you go down that rabbit hole, you'll discover that prior to this catastrophic event, there seems to have been a globally interconnected megalithic civilization all over the world that had aerial capability and mapped Antarctica prior to the last ice age. So what starts out as a questioning of your upbringing can really lead to a lot of different red pilling of oneself, so to speak. And the picture of reality that you wind up with is nothing like what you started. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Bill, tell us about how you developed your politics starting from childhood up to...
Well, my political beliefs started very young. You know, I was born in '46, so I was a baby boomer. And I remember the first presidential campaign I was aware of was Eisenhower when he ran for president. And we had, my parents had campaign buttons laying around, and they said, "I like Ike." And, you know, but I didn't or couldn't grasp the details at the time. But later on, I looked back, and what I saw was that Eisenhower was a laissez-faire president. You know, he believed in doing as little as possible and letting people, the free people of this country, live their lives as they saw fit. And, you know, I think that they call the 50s the golden years of this country. And my recollections agree with that those are the best years of my life. But as time went on, you know, I've lived through many presidential campaigns, and one of the things I liked best in my education was history. I was a social studies major in college, but my social studies major, but I also majored in history. And in the same time, my hobby was wargaming, and I was always learning about military history. So when Vietnam came along, I looked at the situation, and I remember now, and you know, history says that Kennedy really got us into Vietnam in the first place, but it wasn't that he really wanted to be there. And he actually realized that we should pull out of Vietnam, and he wanted to do that. And then he was assassinated. What a coincidence, okay? So that's I saw that as the dark side of politics. And who took over? LBJ. And who escalated the war in Vietnam? LBJ. Who drafted people to go to Vietnam, whether they wanted to or not? LBJ, a Democrat. Okay? Now, you know, this goes back to one of the things Ike said was beware the military-industrial complex. Well, what happened in the Vietnam War? The military-industrial complex prospered. Okay? And who was part of that? The Democrats. And you know, up until the Bushes came along, you could look at the wars we were in, and it was always a Democrat that was president. FDR during World War II, Truman took over afterwards, and he was involved in World War I. And you know, now we get to today, and what I've seen has happened is that I could see it happening as my life went on, where the Democrat Party became more and more liberal. And now, towards these end times, as I see it, at least for me anyway, the leftists, the socialists, the communists, whatever you want to call them, have infiltrated the Republican Party too. And the best evidence for that, in my opinion, was that nobody vetted Obama when he ran for president. Okay, nobody actually vetted him. And even though there was evidence, starting with Hillary Clinton herself, in one of their debates during their primary campaign, she brought up the issue of Obama's citizenship and where he was born. But of course, when Obama beat her in the primary, she turned around, her and Bill made a deal with Obama. They would help him, they would campaign for him to become president if he would make Hillary his Secretary of State, which he did after he got elected. So anyway, the other side of that coin was that no Republican questioned Obama's citizenship, even though later on down the line, Sheriff Arpazio's cold case posse found evidence that Obama's birth certificate, which he posted online after Trump pressured him to, was a forgery. Why would a guy who was a legitimate citizen of the United States need to forge his birth certificate? Anyway, nobody followed up on that. They gave the evidence to every member of Congress, and a couple of them said they would follow up on it, but none of them did, Republicans or Democrats. All right? So let's come down to today. The country's terribly divided. Well, I blame Obama for a lot of that because during his term, he made race an issue. You know, he says, oh, this guy could have been my son, and other things like that, that, you know, were really racist, that divided people. Now we come to today, and here we have a presidential ticket where Biden is openly saying he's moved to the left, and he's picked a vice presidential candidate who you may not be aware of, but she is, just like Obama, constitutionally ineligible to even run for vice president, let alone be vice president. She was born in this country, but neither one of her parents were born in this country, and neither one of them had even become naturalized citizens at the time she was born. And the Constitution says that a president or vice presidential candidate has to be a natural-born citizen. Natural-born citizen is someone born in the country whose parents were both born in that country. So she's not eligible.
We'll have to research
but once
that.
again,
Bill, we'll have to research
yeah,
that.
go ahead.
That's a good point.
I've already researched it.
Okay, we'll put that on.
But go ahead.
If you could send that to me or the links, and then we can all research that because that's
But
a sub-issue.
anyways, just evidence that, you know, both parties have been infiltrated, and basically, you know, all we can do is go with what we feel right now and vote for who we feel is the best. But there's a good possibility that no matter how we vote, we're not going to wind up on the good side. The people are going to get screwed. But we'll see what happens.
Okay.
And that's where I am now.
Excellent. Okay. So when I came in, Ike was president, and there were I like Ike buttons, and I'm the youngest of three. My brother is 7 years older, my sister 5. So I'm this baby, and there's Ike buttons everywhere. But what I noticed when the Kennedys got elected, my mother had this huge scrapbook. So I think she was saying that she was a Republican, but she was badly in love with the Kennedys. It was like Camelot. I really wasn't really involved in the politics of life. I was just like wanting to be a good daughter. So my dad wanted me to be Republican. He was so excited when I was able to vote, and like a dedicated, loyal daughter, I went and pulled the Republican thing. I wasn't thinking about it, but the Vietnam War really got to me. And so I felt I couldn't really push back against the Republicans all around me. Although Pennsylvania in the 60s was mostly a Democratic state, and most of the people that won were Democrats. But around when Clinton got elected, so I rebelled against the Vietnam War. My rebellion was mostly going out, getting married at 16. So I rebelled in whatever way I could. I wore the fringe jackets and the mini skirts, and so I dressed inappropriately, and I rebelled, and other people followed suit. So we did what we could. But by the time the 90s came and there was this Clinton election, I remember I was trying to get out of work to go vote. My whole life has just been working jobs, never making enough to make ends meet, and just like in this struggle. So I wanted to get out and vote, and I said, this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I vote or not. It doesn't matter, because whoever wants now, that's going back and forth, Republican, Democrat. And then years later, I met a couple people that were whistleblowers, like Andy Bashago and George Green, who were involved with the secret government, secret military. And George Green, in his last interview with me, June of 2019, said that he was on the inside track. He was in the big meetings with all the Illuminati, basically. And he was in with the, which was the Ted Kennedy, but there were other people, all these people that were in control of the planet. And they said, and George had invented derivatives, which is what brought down the housing market, right? So he was in a meeting, and he was there, and he came up with the idea. He said, we'll just put all these mortgages together, and we'll bundle them and sell them. And so that was part of what I don't know the politics about it, but that's how that collapsed. So anyway, in that meeting, they said, well, George, you're very good. Let's have you be the financial advisor for the next president. Who's the next president? Jimmy Carter. Is Jimmy Carter Republican or Democrat? Well, who is this guy? How do you know he's the next president? We're not even near the election. Well, George, we just assign people. They're not elected, they're selected. They get selected by the Illuminati, and everything falls in place, and we put them where we want them, when we want them. And that's what Andrew Bashago said. He went back in the 60s or 70s. He was at a big dinner luncheon. His dad was in the secret military, and they said the same thing. George Bush 1 and 2 were there. A bunch of people that were there that later became president, and they were told at this meeting, you're going to be president. And George II said, well, golly, did you hear that? I'm going to be president of the United States. So I think that's really what's going on. All this is a fallacy, and that's what led me to active measures. But politically, since you can't really control who's at the top, I guess, because it's all fixed, and I think that's what active measures is showing. It's all fixed by somebody who's got the money. You follow the money, that's the power, that's who's going to be put in these positions of control over masses of humanity. So I look at policies, and I'm a liberal. I like socialism. I have social security. People go to school. School is a socialistic program. There's a list of 100 socialist programs that the United States has had, for 100 years, and our country is founded on many of these socialist programs. So I think we need to just be looking at it differently. What works? What helps people get their needs met? I think it's atrocity. It's a sin against God and humanity to have. I go into town, and there's all these homeless people, and there's all these homeless, and there's more and more and more. And, the malls are empty now. Let's give them homes. Let people have dignity, lives with dignity. And the money's a fake thing. It was established by, one of the things I do is I research the Anunnaki, and they're the ones that came here 450,000 years ago, and they created human beings. That's God. That's a biblical God. And They basically dummied us down and kept us slaves, and they used the active measures and all these wars to keep us dummied down, and they've shortened our life expectancies. They're geneticists, and so I think that's what's really going on. So I'd let you go back the next round. James, maybe what we can do is, since we did like a couple rounds here, is if we have any feedback for anybody else, or let's just go free flow. So James, I decide the first two rounds, your turn. How do you want to take this conversation? Do you have a question for everybody or a topic for everybody? Passing it to you, James.
Oh, no. I love to talk about active measures if people feel about that.
We can't
James's
hear you.
voice sounds like Stephen
Hear me
Hawking.
okay?
Did you move your car?
Can you hear me okay?
Now we
No?
can. Yeah.
I did.
I don't have his
Okay. Yeah. I just thought it would be nice to talk about active measures and the political situation here, and
Go ahead.
the polarization, and how even if we disagree with each other, we can agree that there's polarization happening.
Yeah, I can agree with that. You know, I don't necessarily agree with how or why it's come about, but yeah, we definitely become polarized.
How do you think it's come about?
Well, I think it's been going on, like Janice said, for 100 years. Woodrow Wilson, under his administration, that's when the first real socialist programs were passed. That was Social Security and the progressive income tax. And since then, you know, it's been an ongoing escalation of more and more social programs piled on, which has meant more taxes and more spending. And I can remember, you know, several campaigns, political campaigns, especially presidential campaigns, where it was people trying to make a clear choice between small government and low taxes, or big government and high taxes and spending. And we used to be able to say, well, you know, he's a tax and spend Democrat, and people would see that that's what they were, and then they had a clear choice. But you know, over the years, with the increasing social programs, more and more people became dependent on the government for their lives, for their income, for their food and their medical care and everything like that. They didn't work, so they had to get the government to support them. And that's one of the first things that divided people, especially black people, was the government deliberately set up these programs so that these black women would have kids and they wouldn't need a husband. Welfare became their husband, and the men realized, hey, this woman doesn't need me, and they go out and on their own and mess around and do all kinds of things because they didn't have to worry about supporting their families. And you know, now we talk about
I wonder, Bill, if you are happy or unhappy with the deficits that are being run by the Trump administration these past few years.
Well, I'm not happy with it, but I saw until the virus hit, it looked to me like his economic policies were working. And I thought eventually, if the economy kept getting better and better the way it was, that eventually we'd start catching up with those deficits and start paying them off because we had greater income for the country. And unfortunately, you know, or accidentally, we had this virus come along, and next thing you know, Trump's saying we got to shut the economy down because Fauci told them that's what the right thing to do was. And, you know, now the economy is starting to come back, but if Biden gets elected, you know, he's promising to go back to the economic policies that he supported under Obama. And Obama as far as I can see, from what I remember, his economy grew very slowly. It was almost stagnant a lot of the times. And they still kept raising taxes and spending more money. And I fear that's what's going to happen if Biden wins. That Trump won't able to re-implement his economic policies, and hopefully they're coming up with a vaccine maybe as soon as the end of October, which would allow people to go back to work, most people. And once the economy starts growing again and generating more income again, the pressure will be off to raise taxes, and hopefully eventually we'll pay off the deficits. But yeah, I mean, it's even worse because of the virus, because we spent trillions of dollars trying to keep people going while the economy was shut down.
So can you tell me about the, the Republican tax break bill? I think it was 2017 when Donald Trump was in office, and the Republicans controlled the Senate and the House. What do you know about that bill that was passed, and how did it impact the United States, do you think?
Well, I think from what I remember, it set the economy on fire. That's when the economy took off, was after that tax bill that, lowered taxes. And that's always been the thing, that's always been the difference going back to Reagan, and even JFK said that the best way to stimulate the economy was cut taxes. And but people don't remember that, except maybe with exception of me or a few others. But that's always been what works to make the economy going. If the Democrats either don't want the economy to go, or they're just so determined to implement socialist policies that they keep raising taxes and spending more money. And you can look at
let me ask.
Obamacare was a perfect example of that.
Bill,
yes,
there's a system that they do, and it's been going on forever, that the Republicans get in, they cut taxes, but they don't balance the budget. They run into more and more of a deficit. It's not working. It's an artificial system, and then when because
it never has a chance.
Let me finish my sentence. They make the Democrats
the left.
They come in, they've got to raise taxes because nothing's balancing. If you remember, Clinton balanced the budget the first time in a long time. So, but anyway, that's just a game they play. Like we said, there's really no difference between the two parties that much. We're looking at policies. So, and the taxes, just lowering taxes on the rich doesn't really. There's no trickle down. It doesn't trickle down to us. That doesn't work. That's proven time and time again. That doesn't work. Back in the 60s, the rich paid a greater share than they're doing now, and they pay less and less and less. I don't want to go into the nuances of that. We're going to stick on the active measures. So James, bring us back onto what's going on with active measures. So, because we only have, how much time we have? A little bit less than an hour. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So, what happened recently in the news, it's very predictably created greater divides between people, higher stresses between people, between political parties and factions inside the United States. So we saw that Donald Trump there was a recording from Bob Woodward, a number of recordings where Donald Trump disparaged the troops, and then, that's obviously not the greatest thing for Donald Trump to hear, that his recording saying that the troops were, he just didn't like the fact that they were on display as wounded and things like that. And he said that people who went to the Vietnam War were losers or suckers, Well,
and then he denied that.
He did deny that, yeah. But do you know that Fox News actually confirmed that report?
No, I watch Fox News all the time, and they did not confirm that report.
Would you like to bet some money on that?
Yeah, I'll bet $1 million.
Write the check.
Write the check.
Yeah, so the fact is that they did run pieces on Fox News that said that this is all a setup. You know, Glenn Gutman, I think his name is, Gutfield, something like that, went into kind of a rant, and he was like, this is such an obvious setup. You know, Biden said released a video right after, an advertisement right after. It's an obvious setup. If you don't see that, you're an idiot, that kind of thing. But the fact is that a couple hours before he went on that rant, Fox News ran a piece from, you know, a reporter of theirs who said that she had confirmed those facts.
A former reporter. She no longer is with Fox News.
Well, she was on Fox News, so I'm not sure what you mean.
Bolton and a couple other people who are not friends of Trump came out and said they were there when he supposedly said those things, and they said they did not hear him say that.
So this is active measures, right? This is not a shared reality, and people denying things were said. That's one side, and the other side reports things that they feel are true.
Right.
So the main thing is, which divides us further. So this is a very predictable thing. I could come on here, you know, every single week. It's the same old story. It's just for some reason people don't notice different content, same dynamic, which is the content this week is like Trump did that, or Trump was recorded as having said that he downplayed the coronavirus on purpose, and he knew how deadly it was on purpose. You know, he knew how deadly it was in February, but he was downplaying it publicly because he didn't want to create a panic.
Because he didn't want people to panic. Yeah.
Right, but that obviously costs lives. I mean, not wanting people to panic is one concern, but then costing people's lives is obviously another concern. So then, you know, that's a big thing, but obviously you are not going to be in a shared reality with the rest of the, you know, the non-Trump world. If I hear you correctly, Bill, and your kind of gasps and kind of, you know, sounds that you're making. So this, again, it just only serves to create greater tribalism. And we can see where it's going to go. People are getting killed. Donald Trump is not, you know, he did not condemn the actions of that 17-year-old kid who killed a couple American citizens. And even Ann Coulter said that she wanted him to be her president. Another guy said that he was going to have to beat conservative women off with a bat after having gotten a couple pelts on his wall, something like that. So we can see the normalization and escalation of violence, even to the point of murdering other Americans. And this is obviously, I mean, we can see where it's going to go. There's no end in sight.
Did you watch the videos of the shootings when the kid was involved?
So you're asking me the question, why?
Because I watched the videos, and what I saw was all self-defense.
Right. Are you aware that that guy went with a gun across state lines, which is an illegal thing for a 17-year-old to do, and actually put himself into that situation on purpose?
Yes, but he also went there with the idea of protecting private property, and he also went there with medical skills, and he also offered people who had been hurt his medical skills, tried to help them. So
this is the situation, right? So this is active measures. You have people who have one narrative, and if I can speak for you a little bit, Bill, I'm sensing that you feel 100% sure that your narrative is like the God's truth, and you feel 100% certain that it's true. And then other people who have a different perspective, have a different point of view, they're 100% wrong, and there's no gray area, there's no collaboration, there's no compromise, there's no shared community, and there's no shared reality. And I'll just say it again, even at the point where one American citizen who has no business protecting anybody because it's not his job, he's not in the police, he has no business protecting business. No, he is a citizen using lethal force against other Americans, taking that vigilante power onto himself. And even then we can't have a shared reality. So that is, it feels to me like an extreme situation, and we still can't have a shared reality around that. So that lets me believe we will pretty much not be seeing a de-escalation of polarization or a de-escalation of power struggle in the foreseeable future.
Okay, well, I said it looks to me like he was defending himself. But I also know that he's going to go to trial, and it'll be decided in court who was right and who was wrong. Okay, and I'm willing to wait for that to make a final judgment.
Are you willing to say that murdering other citizens is pretty much completely wrong all the time when one citizen kills another?
One guy tried to hit him with a skateboard, and the other guy was pulling a pistol out when he shot him, and blew away part of his arm. He didn't kill him, but they were after him. There was a mob after him. He was alone, and there was a mob coming at him, and he defended himself.
Bill, the one I saw, that was after he already killed 2 people. So they were trying to stop him from killing more people.
No, he shot one guy
story. We don't know what's
who was coming at the business, the car lot, with a Molotov cocktail, and he shot that guy, and he went over to see how bad he was hurt, and he got on the phone and he called a friend and said, I think I killed a guy. So then he took off, he ran down the street, and the mob pursued him. And they pursued him for a couple blocks, and then he tripped and fell, and they caught up to him, and they were trying to attack him while he was on the ground.
right, but he already killed.
Yeah, so here we have 2 different realities, right? We could talk about this for the next 40 minutes, and we'll never come into a shared reality. Yeah.
It's 2 different points of view.
One where a guy who goes across state lines illegally with a gun and kills 2 people, right? Right, that's fair to say that he did that, right? Where he's like in the right and he's like the victim, so he was just protecting himself. And another reality where he murdered a couple people, and that's not something that we want to support in the United States.
It will all be resolved in court. That's why we have courts and judges and juries.
So we don't need to talk about it anymore.
So I'm not making a final verdict here. I'm just pointing out that to me it looks like he was defending himself. And they're going to use those videos in court to try and prove it one way or another. His defenders, his defense attorneys are going to use that.
They probably will pull out 20 more videos because every street corner has videos now. So you can bet your last dollar that there will be bunches of videos, and then all those people at cameras. We're in a society that
both sides will present all the evidence they have, but it'll still be decided by jury, a judge and jury. And that's the way the system's supposed to work.
Walking around with assault rifles.
But you're judging him as a murderer. You're the ones judging him as a murderer before he's been tried.
Shot somebody, killed him.
Right, he's not guilty. He's not guilty of murder, the crime of murder. And he took a gun. He took a gun. Proven guilty. He took a gun and he he put himself in harm's way, and then he killed a couple people.
Right,
I mean, it's
it's
pretty cut and dried for me.
According to the law of the land, he's innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
You guys are the ones prejudging him. You're the ones that are showing prejudice here and prejudging him.
Wow.
Walking around with a gun over his side, they intend on pulling it somewhere. They're looking for the situations where I get to pull it out. They watch one too many Western or Star Wars, and they go around getting into place where there's trouble, so they can say, "Well, I defend myself." You got to look at the heart. They sit there and they plan.
It just occurred to me that at the end of the video, when he was defending himself, you can listen to the video and you hear other gunshots being fired in the background.
I know. Let's get off.
Okay, so somebody else was armed there. Somebody else was firing guns.
Let's get off this subject because it's boring. Okay.
It just sounds like you're super sure of yourself. I think it's just the dynamic here is that you're really sure of your stance. It sounds that way to me. Like you feel that he was justified in what he did.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it looks to me like he was defending himself. And if he was defending himself, self-defense is allowable under the law. But I'm also saying that my opinion doesn't matter because it will be decided in a court of law. I'm not saying he's innocent or guilty. I'm saying that's what it looks like to me.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you that he is not guilty of a crime yet, and
so Jay,
that'll be settled in court.
Let's go to the next topic because this one's we're not going to solve it. So let's continue because we're already out of time here. Go ahead, Russell.
One of the things that I've noticed lately in online conversations is that the name of Yuri Bezmenov is coming up in both pro-Trump circles and anti-Trump circles, and they're both accusing the other side of being a sucker for active measures. The pro-Trump circles think that it's all being perpetrated by the left, that they've infiltrated the universities. We've got liberal professors brainwashing kids, and that Marxism and socialism has been pushed onto the United States through active measures. And then the anti-Trump circles will point to people like Malcolm Nance, counterterrorism expert that's written 3 books on the subject, tying Trump to Russian oligarchs. Malcolm Nance says he's heavily indebted to Russian oligarchs, have been laundering money and all kinds of crimes for years. So both of these polarized sides are invoking the name of Yuri Brezhnov and mentioning active measures, but the right is pointing to the left, blaming them, and the left is pointing to the right, blaming them. What do you have to say about that, James?
Yeah, fascinating topic. I just was speaking with someone who is exactly as you described, who sees Marxism and, you know, the left, fascism of the left on college campuses and things like that, exactly like what you described. Just spoke with him this morning. And it's kind of fascinating to me. But what he and I were able to come to, although I would say, I just want to say this because, you know, he and I disagree, and, you know, the 2 perspectives that you just said, what comes to mind is that, you know, there's an idea that he was putting forth that Trump is outside that globalist agenda that's pushing active measures on the world. And I would just say that's not a really, I don't think that's a, you know, I don't see that, because Donald Trump is a populist charismatic leader, and you elect a populist charismatic leader as the first part of the stage of destabilization. When you want to, when you're done with demoralization, which takes decades, you start destabilization as the second phase. It starts with everyone's sick of the establishment, right? Which was what the 2016 election was essentially about. Bernie was was very popular. Trump was very popular on the other side. Everybody's sick of the establishment. It doesn't work. You got somebody like Trump in there who has a character where he is very charismatic, obviously. He said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose supporters, and I think that was 100% accurate. That's not normal, right? But you can actually psychologically manipulate people and condition them to really follow a strongman leader like that, who's going to come in and kind of clean the system out, which is what he promised to do. And so that, to me, matches what Yuri Bezmenov was saying very, very exactly. And now, since Trump was elected, the idea is that we have between 2 to 5 years, and then there's going to be a crisis. And obviously, we have an election coming up 4 years after he was elected. The election is predictably going to be contested, and then we're going to have what happens after that, which is going to be yet another escalation of power struggle. And the thing about that is, there are a couple interesting things about that for me. One is that because Donald Trump was elected, and because he fits that mold really exactly, I think he's part of the situation. It's just naive to think that he somehow skated past the globalists who are kind of losing control of the situation. And then the other thing is that one side in America is heavily armed, right? And the other side is not heavily armed. So why, if I were going to set up the situation to have a certain outcome, why would I arm the people who are going to be my enemies? And why would I not arm the people who are going to be supposedly on my side? And the answer is, I wouldn't do that. That obviously wouldn't be something that I was going to do. And so for that reason, we can kind of see very clearly who has the power and who does not have the physical power of force and coercion on their side, as well as the spirit of coercion, I would say, is the white supremacists and alt-right kind of, you know, Republican Trump supporters. So for that reason, I just think it's naive to think that like there's a communist or Marxist movement in the United States that somehow has power, even though, you know, it has been off the table. There's nobody who is into that in the corridors of power. I mean, you can't say that any of the banking system or the, you know, the military industrial complex is a bunch of commies. It just doesn't make any sense. But when you think that they would use those labels to scapegoat other people and to entrain people on their side in order to follow them more closely, that makes much more sense to me. So I think it's pretty clear for me which side is actually more accurate, but it just makes a lot of sense that they would use Yuri Bezmenov and tie him to, which he did say, Yuri Bezmenov did say over and over again, big brother, big government is the enemy, Marxist leftists are the enemy. But that's true that he said that, but the most important thing that he said was just ideology itself can be twisted, and it's any ideology could be twisted. It's not necessarily like a big brother ideology. You can take an ideology like small government is good, and you can twist it a little bit, and you can have Ronald Reagan say something like, government is always the problem, it's never the solution. That's twisted ideology. Or you can twist like tax cuts to the rich pay for themselves, and then you can ride that thing for 40 years, and apparently you can get away with it because of, you know, just that's the way this media system works, is you just keep on saying that it's true, even though there's a lot of evidence that says it isn't true. And then you just keep on going until you basically give so many tax cuts to the rich that we have such an incredible concentration of wealth in the top 1% of 1%, and everybody else is suffering. Of course, everyone thinks the system is broken because the system is not serving the people's needs. Why is it not serving the people's needs? Well, one obvious reason is because the richest of the rich have all the money and they just put it in the stock market. Stock market goes up, people's wages, real wages don't go up. People's real wages are stagnant or go down. But then they could say, oh, the economy is doing great. Look at the stock market, it's amazing. And it is amazing for the people who put their money in the stock market due to, you know, big windfalls that they didn't even work for. So anyway, that's kind of what I think about that. But it's a fascinating thing. And what I talked to this guy about was, what do we agree about? And we actually agree about the most important things, which is this process is happening. And the United States is headed down into a horrible, horrible situation unless we can create a shared reality, educate people. It's an information war. We have information solutions. And we need to basically create an epidemic of understanding on this topic quickly. So that's, you know, we're in agreement about that, he and I. And I would love to know if the people on this call agree that that would be the way to address the problem that we have.
It is, but I don't have much faith in it because people are so dug in that they're not receptive to even the basic set of facts that the other person's drawing their worldview from. The narrative that Trump is fighting the deep state has always puzzled me because to me, the deep state are the super rich people that make money on every bullet fired on every conflict on earth. And one of the first things he did was overlook the torture, murder, and dismemberment of Khashoggi so that he could sell billions of dollars of arms to Saudi Arabia.
Right.
So he's feeding the beast. And how a person could look at that and say he's fighting the beast, I don't get it.
No, he's joined the club.
Yep.
It's a caste class system. The whole world is a caste class system. There's the rich and the rest of us. So in order to play ball, he has to join the club and he has to kill babies, or there's something that they do so that the other people in the club have something on you. So you can't, you know, turn against them because they have something on you. So he's in it. Has anybody watched the Active Measures documentary that I've asked everybody to watch?
Not yet.
Huh? Not yet.
I watched it a long time ago.
I haven't been able to watch it.
Let's watch it.
I've been having.
Commit to watching it between now and the next time, which I hope is next week, because I don't think that you can watch that and not really get something on a different level, because it really is very logical. James, what year, when did you last watch it? 2017 or 2018 or whatever it was?
Something like that. Yeah, a couple of years ago. Yep, that sounds about right.
Is it on Netflix or Prime?
It's on
somewhere. I can't remember where.
Hulu has it, and I saw it on Amazon, and I'm going to rewatch it and take good notes this time because they lay it out. And when you get done watching it, you're really pissed off because they've been plotting to take our country away from us since the 80s. This is what the Illuminati have.
Longer than that.
Long vision. They have the long vision. They know the psychology to come in and disrupt our country. And the reason why they want to do that, and Putin took a long time to get into power. So he was aware of the system and he worked his way up. And he's president for life. He's going to be president till 2036. He got himself in there. And so they have the strategy, the psychology to go in and disrupt from internally. They can disrupt internally so that people vote for Putin, and they can disrupt the United States. So now we're going to be, there's a map out there that has the United States is broken down into 5 or 6 countries. Well, at that point, we have no power left. you know, and that's what happened to the USSR. Remember USSR, the Beatles going back to the USSR? They're not that anymore. They're Russia. And that's why Putin is pissed. And he saw that Trump was in trouble. And it's just like the series Ozark about money laundering. Well, the world is run by a giant money laundering scandal. And so the Russia couldn't get into the United States, so they needed to money launder. They needed to launder their money. And they pulled in Trump, who was struggling in the 80s. He was $80 million in debt. He was about to be a nobody. And they said, come on, son, we've got a deal for you. And they cut a deal. And isn't that when Reagan went to Russia too? And then if you watch The Family, which is a 5-part series, I recommend you watch those too. And you'll get the pieces of this puzzle and why active measures is actively being used. And the other part is stochastic terrorism, where the person gets a Hitler's thing. The person hates somebody, and then other people end up acting it out. So we've got this Nazi, you know, they're calling socialists wrong. These are Nazis, white supremacist Nazis. They came over here after Operation Paperclip. World War II was just a sign-off. It was just like, we're going to call a truce for now, but let's send 10,000 Nazis over to the United States with all their families. And so that's what they're doing with Putin. Well, you have all these hotel rooms, motels, and everything, all these places that are empty. We're going to buy condominiums, and we're going to build more. And this is a good way to money launder, Trump. We're going to fill up your hotels with Russian citizens, and they're going to come in and infiltrate the United States and neighbors. There are thousands and thousands of Russians that are in here just waiting for this second shoe to fall after this election. I went through that, and I said, we are screwed. I want to use the F-bomb, but we are screwed. It's a done deal. They know everything. They're going to do something like they did the last time Hillary was in there, and she was up against, as Secretary of State, she was over in Russia, and she was up against Putin, and she knew. Hillary knows about active measures. She knows the strategy, and she called him on his shit. And he said, we're not going to let that woman win. And they do these bots. These are fake IDs. They come in and they infiltrate all. I have put posts up, and the next day I've got 100 pro-Trump posts. There's not that many pro-Trumpers. These are bots. The Russians have 24/7 thousands of people that just go in there and they put postings on fake IDs everywhere. So that then you're thinking, wow, if everybody likes Trump, well, I must be stupid. No, you can't come up against the bots, and that's what they do. They make fake stories. There's a great series to watch. It's called The Good Wife, and it's followed by The Good Fight. And it shows exactly how these large, Yahoo and Google, and, all these companies have been infiltrated and taken over by special Russians and could be Chinese as well. But if they have an agenda they want to put forth, they bombard us with propaganda. So there's no true stories anymore. They're all fake stories. So you got to sit back.
Well, speaking of propaganda,
yeah.
The QAnon narrative, the cult of QAnon has progressed in their mind control business to the point where in some circles, if you criticize Trump, you are a sex trafficking pedophile. They've gotten into their head that far that anything you say against Trump, who in their mind is this saintly figure that's busting child sex trafficking every which way but loose. And if you criticize Trump, then that must mean that you, sir, are a pedophile. And that's kind of shocking to confront that.
Well, I just go, well, you're a right-wing wingnut. So you're a right-wing wingnut. You think conspiracies are real. There, 20 years ago with 9/11, there was some logic to it. But no, this is just all Russian bots to have Trump. All these are strategies to get Trump elected. That's all it is. QAnon, it's like, in the mind control, my labs industry, they put things into code words. Like they make, what do they call Manchurian candidates. So they split the mind into alters, and they put these little programs. So Mega is a program, but one of the original ones is Monarch. There was a Disney program. So all these mind lab people, they have programs, and they just turn into robots. They're just all bored. So they compartmentalize the brain. They use trauma to segment it, and then they can easily insert a program. So Mega is a program, QAnon is a program, and that's what you're saying, Russell. You say QAnon, and oh, you're against QAnon. Well, you're a pedophile. So they try to associate these keywords, with the whole string of philosophies. So we can say,
anyone who criticizes Trump is a Luciferian, child-eating, child sex trafficking pedophile now. It's outrageous.
Well, it's just like Orwellian.
Or according to BLM, if a white person says all lives matter, then you're a white supremacist. Well, if you say all lives matter makes you a white supremacist, what does Black Lives Matter make the people that say that? Doesn't that make them black supremacists?
Well, I mentioned my take on race. We just need to throw the whole concept out.
Right.
And according to you, Janet, we're screwed. We're screwed no matter what we do.
For torching buildings, and no, I'm not for that. I can support Black people having equality, but I don't agree about taking down statues and putting graffiti everywhere and torching things. No. So we have to look at the policies that we believe in, that we take on, that we own, and separate it from the programming and this grouping of things. So no, I'm a Democrat. I'm a liberal. I like socialism, and I don't eat babies. I don't traffic women. It's like, no, I'm not taking your life.
Thank you.
Stop.
You don't need babies. That's nice.
Huh? No, I don't eat babies. I don't take fruit. Whatever. It's just ridiculous. Okay.
Well, it reminds me of this, they did a similar thing with the abortion subject, because if you're pro-life in a lot of circles, that means that you're for killing babies, and that doesn't mean that at all. It just means that you defer to the pregnant woman herself to make up her own mind about what she's going to do with her own fertilized eggs.
Well, I grew up with a bunch of girls.
And the fertilized egg is not a human being, right?
Well, nobody kills babies more than the God of the Old Testament. And there's instructions in the Bible on how to induce an abortion. So nobody has a religious leg to stand on in their position on the pro-life stuff.
I don't think it matters what religion you are. I think we can agree on a definition of murder. Murder is defined as killing somebody who is defenseless, that has no weapon, no way to defend themselves. And that's the definition of a fetus. It's a human being that has no way to defend itself. It cannot even cry out. It cannot even cry out.
Ejaculating on the floor. Oh my God, you're killing people every time you ejaculate into your whatever.
Right.
Shirt.
I mean, women exude fertilized eggs every month in their monthly menses. So
no, if you
that's nature. You guys believe in nature, don't you?
Right now,
it's okay for nature to kill, but not humans.
I get to talk.
Yeah, well,
a couple $1 million into artificial wombs, into transferring fetuses, and you can line up all the people in the world that bring their daughters and their sisters and their mothers to take these little aborted fetuses, and you carry them, because nobody's going to take care of them. We don't take care of what we have.
Yeah, because we really don't value life at all when it comes right down to it.
What's that?
If you don't want to take care of a kid, just kill it. And that's what's happening on the streets. People are shooting kids now.
Girls a shot in their arm when they're starting menopause, so they can't have babies until you reverse it. Let's do Brave New World. No,
it's interesting, Janet, what you say about artificial wombs, because I think that's the direction we're going.
Right.
Is genetic selection of children and raising them in artificial wombs. and putting your sperm and eggs in a bank and sterilizing yourself and living a wonderful polyamorous lifestyle the rest of your life. Have sex with whoever you want and not worry about it.
That's a good
And
idea.
if you want a kid, then you go to the genetic bank and pick who you want to be the father and who you want to be the mother, and raise them in an artificial womb and raise your kid.
It's a good idea. I think it's a great idea.
One of the
Yeah,
things
that's a nice vision of utopia.
one of the things that's
Hope it happens
one of the
before
things that's
someday.
happening naturally as a part of planetary evolution that the Republicans and the conservatives and the people who hate socialism aren't going to like very much is, as technology takes over more and more jobs, it increases the need for some program like universal basic income. And there's already several countries that are experimenting with this, because as the jobs are being taken over by artificial intelligence, more and more people are going to be without work and without a way of making a living, and they still need to eat, and they still need a roof over their head. So universal basic income is coming down the pike, whether anybody likes it or not. And there's an author named Callum Chase that's written a couple of books about the economic singularity and the death of capitalism. So capitalism, I understand all the arguments that it incentivizes people to be self-sufficient and blah, 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 but it's on death row.
Great.
I'm glad you think that.
It's not working. A system is not working.
Yeah, it's not working because
People starving.
it's not working because people are constantly resisting it and sabotaging it and fighting against it. So,
It creates
it
slavery.
doesn't work. Hey,
The money system.
let's
slavery.
release a pandemic, and that'll really shut down capitalism around the world.
Okay, it's not working. It either works.
We're naturally evolving into a new paradigm. And it looks like it's going to be some type of IT shared economy on a global scale. And a lot of people aren't going to like that, but it's going to happen anyway.
See, when you
Is it natural when a country releases a weaponized virus on the world? Is that natural?
Well, we don't know that that's what happened.
We don't know.
There's a lot of evidence that that's really what happened. But you, because you're liberals and leftists, you don't see that evidence.
I'm open to it.
It probably goes back to when they Pandora's box, and when the Anunnaki were fighting against each other, they unleashed all these viruses to call the Earth's population, because we were breeding like rats, and there were millions and millions and millions of us, and there were only 900 to 1,000 Anunnaki. So they unleashed these things, and what happened is we are intruding into these areas, like melting the polar caps and melting places that have been under ice, and we're burning down Brazilian forests, and we are unleashing these viruses. We're going in, we're breeding, we have such a huge population, we're going into these areas where the viruses settled thousands of years ago, and we are stirring them up. And so something's happening here. But that's not to say that there aren't people in the labs, modifying them and creating, they always weaponize everything. That's what the United States government does. That's what the Chinese do. They create biochemical warfare to unleash. Yeah, this could be, but nobody's ever going to, you're never going to find out. It is right now what it is. Nobody's going to go to jail for that. No one's going to go to Botany Bay prison on Mars.
Yeah, because it happened in China.
I bet you who it was Trump. That's who I think it was. I think Trump did this, because guess who's benefiting?
Well,
Trump is benefiting. All the money, who's benefiting? Trump's gotten richer, all of his buddies gotten richer, and the agendas to set forth for the Civil War II and World War III. So who's going to benefit? The rich. Just follow the money.
China's run by about 75 people, many of whom have advanced engineering degrees. The United States is run by a reality TV show host. And as we speak, China's building digital infrastructure all over the world, including special roads for autonomous vehicles. So one country is preparing for the future of a digital world, a completely digital world with the Internet of all things. And the United States is just immersed in a cesspool of bullshit.
Right. So
Is that why China has the world's largest Navy now?
Well, we're going to all be dead soon. And then we're going to be in these little souls. We're forced to come back in with baby diapers and we're all going to be bored the next time around. We won't be able to have this conversation because all be my children. I mean, it's absurd.
Well, you know, if that's your vision of the future, then there's nothing we can do, right? We're screwed, like you said earlier.
I think we can.
So what can we do?
We can be conscious and vote for the rights of a human being to have not just the pursuit of happiness, but happiness. How can we help
Is that going to
family and friends have their needs met? I think, okay, this is a level 0 civilization. And I come from the Catholic perspective. Okay, we are so barbaric, so primitive, that we have people being born and they don't even get their needs met. It's like having a baby be born and say, okay, baby, get that milk so you can suck on it all on your own. You better get your gun out and hunt for it. No, that's absurd. We don't give the basic skills to people to survive.
Yeah, it's too bad that baby wasn't aborted. It wouldn't have to worry about things like that.
Let me finish, and then I'll pass the talking stick. I'm giving my theory. You asked it, I'm going to say it. So then we don't even have, we're in a level 0, I have to start over. Level 0 civilization. We come into this planet, we do not have our basic needs met of food, you know, shelter, education, clean air, clean water, clean soil, clean environment. We have a life expectancy based on the Anunnaki of 500,000 years, and we're living less than 100. So there's something wrong with this picture here. But if the advanced civilizations, and I lived on a military base, I had all my needs met. I know what that's like. It's really cool. But I worked my ass off. It doesn't mean you're not going to work, because people will work for luxuries. But if we meet their basic needs, in part like the BMI, basic minimum income, a person's job is to go out and shop and spend that money. They're not going to hoard it. The problem we have on this planet is hoarding. If the money was existence, like a big system, we all get part of it, remain in circulation, we wouldn't have any problem. We wouldn't have war. We would have clean energy, because there's no incentive to monopolize the energy system and have it into a system that can be monetized so that some people are ultra rich and the other people are poor. This is a greed-based system that's a problem. And the same with medicines. We have a cure for all diseases. But the reason why we don't have the cure, at least, is because they're monetized. And this goes back to Nanar, the Anunnaki. When there were too many humans and not enough Anunnaki, I will start a debt system. We have a system of debt, and that's slavery. We are in a slavery system. Not just the black people or the brown people, but every person that is in this caste class that we are in, which is the lower caste class. We're not Anunnaki. We don't have all the information. We're all slaves. And when you get that we're all slaves, then watch active measures and research stochastic terrorism, and you go, we got to get rid of all these systems, these systems of governance government. We need some government are not working. None of them, not a single one of them. So they're about to eliminate democracy. And they said this all along. They said democracies only last about 200 years. I remember in 1976 when we were lighting the fireworks and going, happy anniversary, United States, we're 200 years old. Everybody was surprised it lasted this long. So it's gone on another 30, 40 years. But the original design was it was going to self-implode and destruct, because democracies always end up in dictators. And we have dictator Trump. Yep. And he's working with Putin. So he's saying 12 more years. He wants his dynasty. He wants, I don't know, Ivanka next. I don't know who he wants. Or what's her name? He wants his children to keep.
Probably his son.
No, his son.
The dynasties like to
so
draw.
Yeah. It's a stop. No more than
like to leave things to their sons.
Each point. If you want to have a good system, everybody rotates out 2 years. You can only roll for 2 years, whatever it is. A justice, a senator, you get 2 years and you're out. You can rotate down to some local level and come back in 10 years or something. But this is too much power. The presidency is just a monarchy. That's all it is. Back when they founded this, they didn't know any difference, so they just gave it a different label.
You know, you basically have limited terms in the House already. 2 years, they have to run for election every 2 years, and yet you see people in the House that have been elected over and over again, like Nancy Pelosi.
No, they can't get elected.
And, you know, so she's had a career in the House.
No, they can't come back. They can't come back. They go do something else. They can go be the garbage collector,
Yeah. Well,
dog catcher.
in order to pass a law like that, you have to go through the Congress, and you have to go through the people that are in Congress now who have made careers out of being reelected like that, and they're not going to limit themselves or their cronies if they can help it.
Throw the government all the whole world and get something extraterrestrial, because none of the human systems are working, and that may be what happens. We might get extraterrestrial intervention because this is no longer a viable situation. Maybe that's what the COVID is about. We're calling the population, what do you call it? The depopulation bomb or Agenda 21. So they want to get the human species down to like 500. Is it 500 million or 500,000? Russell, help me out here.
500 million.
500 million. They think that's all they need to have a viable population is 500 million. So we have to get into space
for planetary balance, right?
Right, to have enough bigger, to have enough variety in the species, so we have hybrid bigger. So,
Janet, you mentioned the Type 0 global civilization. Michio Kaku, in my estimations.
Uh-oh, where are you? Are we down? Or is it just Russell? James, are you there? Uh-oh.
I'd just like to say one thing right now. Now I know how Juan Williams feels on the 5.
I got booted. Damn.
At least you're a good sport, Bill. At least you're a good sport.
Excuse me? Oh, thank you. I try to be.
James, are you still with us? You've been so silent.
You bet. Yep, I'm here.
What do you think of all
Just
this?
listening.
What do you think?
Well, just a lot of disagreement. Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense to me that the globalists would be defined, you know, as kind of an enemy of everybody, and everybody thinks that they're not in the globalist community and they want to fight against them, and it just is a mess. It's a BS show. And
Could I ask
people who don't agree don't live in the same community and can't work together to protect themselves. Yuri Bezmenov says it's a great brainwashing operation, active measures, where at the end of it, somebody can't make sensible conclusions to protect themselves, their families, their communities, and their country. And I think that's the situation that we see. Everyone's got their own opinion and no one's really listening or cooperating with each other. So
Correct.
It is a little bit hopeless, like what you said, Jan, and it kind of, unfortunately, it rings a little bit true for me. It's hard to find hope sometimes for me.
Right.
Could I make a point about globalization?
Sure.
I think we've seen how many empires have tried to rule the world, at least the world as they knew it at the time. And then you go to science fiction and go to Star Wars, and you see how one man, an emperor, tried to rule a whole galaxy. And what has happened in all these different examples is that the empires break down because when you have a centralized government like that, well, either one man or one entity can't rule the whole thing. And he winds up having to share power with lower people, like in Star Wars. The emperor had to divide up the galaxy to let it be ruled by his governors. And then those governors had problems. And eventually, you saw what happened. The emperor got defeated. I don't know if the Republic succeeded at ruling the galaxy, but at least they overthrew the emperor. And then you see all the empires on Earth through history, how they failed. And Janet's talking about democracy failing, but totalitarian empires have a worse record about failing and falling, going
Well,
way
if
back
it's,
to the Greeks and the Romans.
Bill, if it's any consolation, it won't be an ordinary human being that runs the world. It'll either be an electronically augmented human being or artificial superintelligence. So
Yeah,
put your fears to
Well,
rest.
we're gonna get bored soon. Yes.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Yeah. We're in for some interesting times. I don't see it going well. Either person wins in this election, because if Trump wins, the left's going to act out. The fringes of the left are going to act out that have the potential for violence. And if he loses, the right fringe that has the potential for violence, the right-wing militias, the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis, they're going to be activated. So I think we're in for some dark times no matter who wins.
I
And
think
that could be
that's fair
something
to say.
that the Bible predicts, prophesies.
What were you saying, James?
Go ahead,
Yeah, I
James.
think it's going to be very difficult. No matter who wins, I think that's going to be resolution to our problems that would.
Yeah. So who's going to come in and take over?
Did you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. So if they Tolley take down the United States in this active measures, do you think it's Russia or China or a combination will come in and take over? Will they just put their same type of government?
No one's going to invade us. We're way too powerful to be invaded.
What if we're breaking down
But
to 5 countries and then we don't have a centralized military anymore? That's what the active measures thing said, that Putin said, there's no way I can beat the United States military. So I've got to, come from within and destroy.
yeah, I don't think anybody's going to come in from outside. That would be surprising to me.
Well, once we're
But we could break apart. We'll have to remove ourselves from NATO, and they'll all be taken domino style again.
Mhm.
That makes sense to me.
Right. I mean, you can see this play out logically. So, but still carry on. Russia dissolved, and they're still carrying on. But it's not that pleasant for the individuals living in those societies anymore. But it never has been ultimate. Since I was born, mom and dad were kind of poor, right? They were always in a struggle. Nothing's changed. Are you rich, Russell? James?
No.
Yeah.
No.
That's a balance you're in. No, I like it.
Well, I do consider myself rich, because I have a little black Yorkie poo that I dearly love, and she's worth $20 billion to me. So I consider myself a very rich man. I got a little John boat. I can go out on the water and watch the sun go down. My 3 years on the road hitchhiking with no money taught me some important things on how to enjoy the free things of life and to enjoy nature and the beauty that's all around us. So I consider myself rich, but monetarily, no. I live on Social Security and a little draw from an IRA, enough to keep a roof over my head and feed myself, and that's about it.
Right.
Sounds beautiful.
That's
And I'm happy with that.
I live on a civil service pension with a pittance from Social Security, although I do get Medicare, and I kept my health insurance from my job when I retired. So I get by, but I'm not rich.
great. So James, you said that there were some solutions in spirituality and consciousness, and I think moving in the level of Russell appreciation for what you have and the now, and being rich for the love you have and share. Go ahead, James.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand everything that you said, but yeah, in terms of solutions, I think we just need to come together and be able to have productive conversations with each other about what's true and what's not true, and Unfortunately, it's pretty obvious now that we're pretty manipulated and at the whim of the media that we listen to and trust, and they have shown themselves to be pretty untrustworthy. So we don't have another system yet that we can use to have conversations free of the interference of or the permission of Fox News and the New York Times. And that's number one on the agenda, I think, is to have a media system where normal people can get their questions answered, like about 9/11 or vaccines and autism. And we don't have to wait for like Fox News or the New York Times to cooperate, which I think it's pretty clear they're not going to be cooperating. That's number one on like a societal level, and on a personal level, it would be nice if people had communication skills so that we were able to notice the communication skills of narcissists and other manipulative communication techniques so that we can actually notice something that happens right now. It passes for normal, but it's actually not normal. It's actually very twisted and dark. But if we all could empathize with each other and had, again, effective communication with each other, then we could, we could notice when we're being manipulated. So there's a technique called Darvo, which I like to teach people about, because people fall for Darvo decade after decade. And once it's pointed out to you, you don't have to actually fall for it anymore. Darvo is an acronym. It's like the king thing that narcissists do. It stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and oppressor. And it's so destabilizing to other people emotionally that you can use it in political speech constantly for decades and nobody will ever catch on. But once you learn about it, you'll notice it immediately when it happens. So for example, Newt Gingrich, when he was running for president, I think it must have been in the year 1999 or the year 2000, was in a CNN debate, and it had just come out that he had asked one of his ex-wives for an open relationship, and he had 3 ex-wives, and it was a big thing for like the party of values and all that, family values. And he was asked a question. The first question of the debate was, what's up with you and like all your ex-wives and the family of party of family values? And he said, I can't believe you just asked me that question as the first question of a debate. I can't believe it. And he didn't deny it, right? So that's often implied, but he attacked back as if he had been attacked. He was asked a question, but when somebody attacks back, then the dynamic suddenly is like, was that person attacked or were they not attacked? But you just use the technique and then it looks like the other person attacked you if you have allies there. And so he attacked back, and then he just pretended like he was the victim of the situation, and he wasn't actually, trying to pull a Republican Party on the party of family values. So anyway, then there was a giant round of applause. I really encourage you to go and listen to it on the internet if you can find it, because the applause, I remember hearing it actually in real life and then thinking about it later, but in real life, it just seemed like so out of proportion to me. Like there was such a contingent that was actively applauding the most ridiculous thing that I had ever seen. So that technique, if you see it, Kellyanne Conway used it ad nauseum with everybody who was giving her an interview. Donald Trump uses it, other people use it, and it passes for normal, but it's not normal. It's whataboutism isn't normal. Dismissing things denying things. These aren't actually things that happen in people who are in relationship and want to get along, but they do come up and they kind of pass for normal. But in a society where people can actually communicate with each other effectively, they would be so obvious to everybody that when, say, somebody said, that group over there is a danger to you, that group over there wants to kill you, that group over there hates America, in the audience, instead of saying, wow, that group is really dangerous and I'm going to hate that group now, the audience would say, wow, to the speaker, like, wow, it really seems like you really need something here. And I want you to kind of calm down before you keep talking, because you're just spreading poison to everybody. It's just a matter of education. It just goes along the lines of, if you know a propaganda technique and it's used against you, you distrust the person who just tried to use the propaganda technique against you. If you don't know the propaganda technique and it's used against you, then you fall for it. That's just a thing of human nature.
There's all kinds of logical fallacies being employed too. The plain speak fallacy and the two brains fallacy, and just there's a whole presentation on that. Trump
the time
employs all kinds of logical fallacies in his speech. It's interesting too that the campaign of Andrew Jackson portrayed his enemies as dandies and beaux. You know, that sounds familiar. He was pitched as a plain-speaking, rugged man, you know, and all that. So there's historical parallels to this presidency.
Interesting.
So
Your Darvo sounds like very similar to something out of the Rules for Radicals. I can't remember the name of the author, but Hillary was a disciple of his, and one of the things he said was
Saul Alinsky.
Deny, delay, and demonize. Sounds similar to what your Darvo says.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, I'm interested in that. Denying is such an incredible tactic. It just can work again. It works forever. People never get tired of hearing their own people denying. Sure, the
Trump
Republicans
does
never
that
do
all
that.
the time. You didn't
You
see
hear-
what I just did.
Look at Biden. You know, he's accused of being anti-fracking, but now he's turned around and denied that and says he's pro-fracking. That's leftist. That's Rules for Radicals.
yeah, that's what they both do. That's one thing
Right.
that the politicians all do. They'll say we're going to put a chicken in every pot, and then they everybody. So that's normal.
Yeah, that's been going on a long time, but that's a little different from what's going on now. Promising a chicken in every pot and then doing something different when you're elected.
Guess what they did?
People never called people on that before.
Right.
But now,
Where's the wonderful health care that Trump promised?
Yeah, where's our stimulus?
Where's the border wall that Mexico was going to pay
he's been
for?
blocked by Pelosi when the
There's no
Democrats
stimulus
took over the House. They've been blocking a lot of things that Trump has tried to do, just
Oh.
like they're blocking the stimulus package right now.
No, Trump is blocking it now.
He wants it right before the election so people
Yeah.
will connect his name to the
Pelosi
money.
is saying you can't have a stimulus package unless it's $3 trillion and includes things that they want money for.
Somewhere, but then now they took the stimulus package off the table altogether. They have the skinny bill, which is only $500 billion, and it's not enough to do anything. Anyway, it's so long down the. I don't know how.
Yeah, well, at least he's trying to pass something. But Hillary won't budge unless she gets her $3 trillion.
No, that's just a warping. No, it's folks. Neither of them making anything happen, and the stall technique. So come out right before the election, and they'll go, "Yay, Trump's our hero," but he's not. Okay, so let's figure this out. We got to wrap this up because I said it for 2 hours, and I'm not sure what it is now, and I can't leave the screen. Or I'll lose.
It's close.
I have 10:10 here.
Okay,
10 minutes after 10 here.
we started late, so let's do one final round and everybody wrap it up. James, back to you. What would you like us to cover in this last final round, and then we're going to call it a day?
Thank you. I would love to have everybody just notice how the stories that we're being told and that we believe from the sources that we trust they're mutually exclusive, and they only serve to divide the American community into two factions at least that fight with each other. And that dynamic has been happening for decades, and we should expect it to continue. That's what I'd really like people to take away from this conversation. Thanks so much. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, who do you want to go next, James? Pass the talking stick and give it to somebody.
Bill?
Okay. All I can say is vote Republican. And if you do, you'll be saving this country. If you don't, well, we'll become a totalitarian socialist state overnight. That's it. I'm done.
Russell?
My final statement would be that as we speak, the entire political and economic landscape of the entire world is shifting into a brand new, digitally oriented, cashless world. And we should prepare ourselves for that and not be afraid of it, because it just has to do with planetary evolution.
Great. Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. And Bill, everything you said, reversal. Not ditto, but reversal. Anyway,
Well,
Brad, your dad.
I'm not speaking from emotion. I'm not speaking from hate, like somebody else I know who hates Trump.
Speaking from hate. Nobody on this panel. We're all speaking from love. We're having.
That's interesting. I need to address that. I don't hate Donald Trump. I don't hate anybody. I hate that somebody like Donald Trump has made it to the office of president, because I think that his persona is very bad for children. They set an example that money's the only thing that matters, and you trade your wives in like used cars for a newer model. And if I was still selling cars like I did back in the 80s, I'd probably like Trump because I was a lot like him. But I left that paradigm 40 years ago, and he is in his 70s, and he's still involved in this juvenile one-upsmanship. If I sell something to you, I'm smarter than you mindset, just like the old used car salesman that I used to associate with. And the fact that somebody like that made it to the highest office in the land is terrifying to me.
I would like to see the executive branch replaced with a council of 12 with 6 men and 6 women, balanced. Because that's what we used to have. The Anunnaki had a council of 12, and it was balanced, male to female. And
where are they now?
Well, they're probably controlling this planet, and they're going to come back and take it back and say, "You stupid humans." No, I don't know what's going on. Anyway, something outside of this box, because this box is pretty warped. And hopefully, by the time we have the conversation this fall around the post-election, we'll have some clarity. Hopefully, we'll still be able to communicate and meet on the internet, and still have enough of a society that can get food out to everybody and produce food. And Lord knows, I used to listen to my dad, and he would tell me what happened during World War II. And he had PTSD, and Mom had PTSD from, not having any men to select from during World War II, and having gone through the Depression. And, and you were there with her, 7 years longer than I was. So my parents were pretty screwed up from going through a situation much like we're going through now. This is like a war. The pandemic is like a war, and it is destroying lives everywhere. Apparently, I can't believe that people don't believe in it, because people have these huge deleterious effects from getting exposed to COVID, and their organs are damaged, their life expectancy is shortened, even if they survive. This is part of the terraforming of humanity, these viruses. So wear a mask. Don't argue about it. Don't politicize. Just put on a freaking mask. If you do that.
Yes, mein Führer, I will wear a mask, mein Führer.
Wear a mask. Just wear it. Get the big feet that they had in the 1600s, and they'll be stylish. All right. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Russell, James, and
it's interesting.
And this has been fun.
Thank you.
I hope everybody who listens enjoys it. I got to figure out how to exit this conversation. Okay, there it is. Thank you very much. This has been the Aquarian Radio Network, and I'm Anna Kira Lessin, and we will see you again probably next week, same time.
Bye, Bill. Bye, James. Bye, Janet.
Bye. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.